A significant player capsule today. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of basketball to talk about with this guy. Brandon Miller up on the docket. What did he do last year? What can he do throughout his career? Plus, we give you another mock draft, and we talk about the playoffs as it pertains to the Hornets. That's all today. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. He's also hosting another podcast right here on this very network, too. Two of them, baby. He's got two podcasts on the Locked On Podcast Network. He hosts Locked On NBA with Matt Moore and Hayes. I'm Walker Mail. I have not another podcast. I got a radio show that's not on the network. WFNZ, Sports Radio.
Not yet.
92.7 WFNZ. I'm sure there's going to be something that we'll be doing, and it will grow. Shout out to David Locke, allowing all of this to happen. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate them as always. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Let's get back on the player capsule stuff. Brandon Miller up on the docket today. Disappointing season, really because of the injuries, but perhaps more up for debate. Was it a disappointing sliver of the season, the sliver that he actually played? We can get into that. Let's first give you the numbers, though. What he did this year, didn't play very many games, only played in 27 because he got injured. In fact, he got injured twice. He gave us a sick throwdown jam against the Rockets in the season debut at around the 7:20 mark. And then he suffered a glute strain that kept him out the entire second half. Okay, so immediate game, first game injury. Brandon misses the next 4 games, comes back, and then plays for, again, about 26 games after appearing in the season debut. Scaffolding time. January 20th, we see that Brandon Miller is out indefinitely with a torn wrist ligament. In fact, it is the torn scapholunate ligament in his right wrist, his shooting wrist. So out indefinitely would also mean that he wouldn't play another game. And that happened in January. Here were the numbers that he posted in those 27 games that he appeared in, though. He averaged 21 points per game. That was up from the 17.3 per game average he had his rookie season. He shot 86.1% from the free throw line, got there around the same amount that he did his rookie year. The overall efficiency wasn't nearly as good. On higher volume, he shot 40% overall from the field. He shot 35.5% on three, but that was on 11 three-point attempts per game. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think LaMelo was the only guy that posted a higher per game average from distance than what Brandon Miller did. I'll have to check that. But 11 three-pointers per game. If it's not 1, it's 2. And if it's not 2, it's 3. It's up there. Rebounds, 5 rebounds a game. 3.5 assists, which maybe we should talk a little bit about his assist percentage and how that also increased. So those were the numbers from Brandon Miller in the 27 games he played. Doug, what did you make of the very small portion of the season we got to see him experience in his second year?
Yeah, I think it's just disappointing that we didn't get to see him continue to develop things that we were witnessing in real time him develop, whether it's the shot distribution from, becoming not mainly a mid-range shooter, but certainly a significant portion of his offense in his rookie season was developed off the dribble into the mid-range, off a shot fake into the mid-range. He transferred a lot of that into a few more shots at the rim, but mostly more pull-up three-point shots. Would have liked to see him hit a few more of those, and I think he would have had the season gone on, or I think either that or the shot distribution would have evened itself out a little bit. So that was disappointing. And you look at his playmaking skills that need to significantly improve. He got more responsibility, more assist percentage this season, but the turnover percentage went way up as well. Off the pass, off the dribble, he was turning it over a lot. In fact, one of the significant games this season was, two of his significant games actually came against Detroit, but it was the second one where he had 38 points, and he almost cost the Hornets the game by turning the basketball over multiple times at the end of the fourth quarter. before the Hornets went into overtime, and then Brandon Miller hit clutch shot, made clutch play, defensive plays, blocks, rebounds, tip-ins. Like, he did it all in overtime. And so, like, my overall take on Brandon Miller is that in the small sliver that we got, I thought we saw all the areas where he needs to develop, and also we saw all the flashes of the all-NBA, all-star player that I think we know in our hearts he can be. And I'm just super excited for him to get a full healthy season because this dude is an impact player.
Yeah, we were denied that, which is unfortunate. He was denied that, so we feel bad for him first, and then I feel bad for me second. But I do feel bad for me. Don't get it twisted.
I feel
I'm very
bad
selfish.
for me first.
I feel bad for me just as much, almost, for Brandon Miller, because we're Hornets fans that had Brandon Miller to hang on to his rookie season, despite that season going haywire. That was a bad year, and yet we saw the second overall pick become the right choice and really flourish offensively in big-time moments. He gave you the winning-time buckets. He did so against Detroit twice this season. Killed the Pistons a couple of times. How about the Hornets beating the Pistons a couple times this year? And the Pistons are the example that we want to follow. They're the blueprint to get back to the postseason. Anyway, yeah, Brandon Miller, the 38-point performance against them in overtime, hitting clutch shots. Even if he misses some shots early in the game, he has amnesia. Fourth quarter, bang, starts to hit the big ones. So Brandon Miller still gave you some of that. But you're right, Doug. I would say I don't want to call it disappointing because we didn't have enough of a sample size, I think, to just overall label what he did last year disappointing when he played. But I will tell you, the numbers didn't just take off where they ended last year. That's not what happened. The efficiency, it did go down. You were talking a little bit about the different role that he had. They put a lot more on him, which is weird because LaMelo's usage percentage went sky high, but so did Brandon's. They really wanted Brandon Miller to also have the basketball in his hands a decent amount, and they wanted to change his shot diet. Even with the change in shot diet, people were still losing their minds a little too much about, oh, man, Charles Lee turned Brandon Miller into a three-point merchant, and that's it. That's all he can do. He doesn't have any more of his midi. He doesn't. That's not true. He still takes mid-range jumpers. In fact, he still takes them at a pretty decent percentage. He was in the 67th percentile last year among forwards, taking 28% of his shots. So over 1 out of every 4 of his shot attempts were in the mid-range. Like, that's fine. In fact, you ask nerds, they might even want you to bring that down a little bit more so. Like, it's fine. He's still taking plenty of mid-range jumpers. It's just that 50%, nay, over 51% of his shots last year came from the three-point line. To be honest with you, Doug, he shot better at the rim this year than his average percentile was last year. He just doesn't get there. That's the biggest thing for me.
That's the complaint, right?
That's the complaint. It's not even so much the lack of finishing, because he was better, again, in that little sliver we're talking about. He just didn't get there, man. 16% of his shots. That big, right? Like, this is a 6'9" forward that can handle the basketball a little bit. We documented the problems. That's the one for me, honestly. It's if you see him get that back up to, like, what? Can we get a quarter of his shots? Can we get to 25% of his shots coming at the rim? If that's the case, then I'll be happy with the shot diet. But that's the thing.
Well, if they wanted to do that in year 1 and 2, they were going to have to design more plays where he's cutting to the basket. Because
and he's a good cutter.
He is a good cutter.
Yeah.
But the problem with him off the dribble, there's 2 problems. One, his handle's not tight enough. He would get it picked off too much, and he's not strong enough. And I mean, that's sort of an across the board problem with the Charlotte Hornets. They've got a strength issue just across the lineup. You know, LaMelo needs to get stronger. Brandon needs to get stronger. All of these guys to take the beat. I mean, just in the regular season, not to mention, I mean, I don't know if you've seen these playoffs, but they're pretty rough and tumble on these guys. You're going to have to be able to take a bruising and finish through contact. And so, yeah, I think if he wants to improve his short mid game or his rim game, he's going to have to get stronger. Him and LaMelo are going to have to be, weight room buddies, not just, shooting practice buddies.
Yeah. And last couple things just with where he was taking his shots and some of his overall game from last year. Again, if you're going to shoot that many mid-range jumpers too, the accuracy from the mid-range, it did go down from Brandon, where his rookie season, we were lauding him deservedly so because he hit a bunch of tough shots, right? Like he was actually pretty good from that area of the floor. But when you shoot so many shots from that area of the floor, it's still not great because you have to be at an even better clip than most people that shoot from that area of the floor. And that wasn't true. And then the efficiency even goes down this year from that area. Less shots, great. Thumbs up there. Still have that a part of your bag. I want that to be a part of your bag. That's actually going to show up and be meaningful once we get to the postseason. But shooting 38% from all your mid-range, that's not good. That's not good at all. So it's inside the three-point arc. It's doing more stuff with the basketball in your hands. It's us being able to trust you. I think team defense, he'll slide right on over and swat your bleep on the backboard, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively,
not
just doing more stuff.
Not only swatting it off the backboard, but that game that I mentioned, that second overtime win in Detroit, he made 2 plays with his wingspan. One was the tip in that I went back and watched it today. I always thought that the tip in overtime was Moussa Diabate because both of them went up with Tobias Harris, went up with Tobias Harris, and the cutaway was to Moose. And I always thought that was a Moose tip-in. It was a very clutch play, but you go back and look at it in slow motion, it absolutely was Brandon Miller coming baseline and knocking it in under the rim. And then Tobias Harris with an opportunity off of a intentionally missed free throw with an opportunity to tie the ball game or go up 1, and Brandon Miller comes in off the wing and just gets his hand in there and knocks it away. So yeah, I mean, he was making all kinds of plays. I think there's some improvements that he can make defensively as well with just like his intensity. I think he sort of plays he kind of plays like all-star defense. And I mean that in the way of like sometimes all-star offensive players can play defense in a way that's like, hey, I'm going to give you a lot offensively, so I'm going to maybe just take it a little bit easy on the defensive end. He has great awareness. He can pick passes off, but I think he's got some work to do a little bit defensively as well. But on the shooting stuff, Walker, I'm just not gonna ding him too much in this second year because I think he was going through a slump and he was starting to come out of it, and that's when he got his scaphoidal injury. And I just think eventually he would have worked himself out of that through the season, and these numbers would have been a lot different.
Yeah, I actually want to touch on that point on the other side. Let's continue that. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Bees everywhere! So what type of Brandon Miller sophomore season are we talking about if he actually plays 50 games, if he plays 65 games, and what do we expect from Brandon going forward? Did we change our opinion on him at all? Did we change it even slightly at all? We'll get to all of that coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. Oh my God, last night was incredible. Major momentum shifts, and you get can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have way more than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? How could tracking their trends help you win your next bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? You can figure all of that stuff out by going to FanDuel and starting to have fun with it. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. So all of that stuff we were talking about with Brandon and the 27 games that he played, totally with you in that I would have loved to have seen how he ended his second year in this new system, having gotten his feet wet, having been able to get into a rhythm because of the injury that he had right at the beginning of the season. All of that, I would have loved to have seen how he performed in February and March. And maybe I'm using that as an example. Maybe that's a bad example considering who he would have been sharing the floor with in February and March. But I would have loved to have seen what the numbers look like with him continuing to embrace that role with Charles Lee putting all that responsibility on his shoulders. And there was still plenty of LaMelo in February and March. So maybe Brandon and LaMelo, they would have been able to help each other out. Like I would have liked to have seen that, but we were denied that backcourt. The backcourt that we believe is the backcourt of the future. LaMelo with some questions there, but right now it's the backcourt of the future. So I'm with you. Just all of that. Could you work through all of that? I believe he could and give us better numbers. It's just, man, 27 games. It's barely anything. You know, the math people will tell you that 20 games is about as small a sample size as you could start to legitimately take away something. But still, 27 games is just not much, Doug.
Which is hilarious because these guys eventually have to play 7-game series that sometimes don't go 7 games. And yet, you know, we have to take in 20-game sample sizes. That's always a little silly to me.
You know what's funny, though? You would want to just build takes off of a 1-game sample. Just that's all I need, baby. I know exactly who you are as a player. Just give me 1 game and I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to take off.
Again, as much as we can take from 20 games, it does, at the end of the day, everybody wants to talk about like shot variance, right? They just didn't shoot well. Well, that's the name of the game. Like game 7, game on the line. Can you shoot well or can you not shoot well? That's what we're going to judge you on for the rest of your life. That's sports. Sports isn't looking at, 90-game samples and making judgments. No, it's about game 7. It's about NBA championship. How many rings did you get? That's the whole ball game.
Just not with Brandon this season. Don't listen. Just not with Brandon this season.
Well, here's what I would say on the 27-game sample is that you would be fair to be concerned that Brandon Miller was handed more responsibility in his it is a sophomore season, but everybody, from Steve Clifford to Charles Lee, just you can't get them to shut up about Brandon Miller's IQ and how he's way ahead of the curve. And so if he's way ahead of the curve, that's where we have to judge him on. And I think you would be fair to be concerned that he got more responsibility and the numbers didn't stay flat and they didn't increase. There were some numbers that definitely started to slip. And so I think you're fair to be concerned. And the good news is, hopefully, this Scafalunit thing is close to being out of the way, and he can get a mostly healthy summer to continue to improve his game. He seemed to be locked in, from all accounts, like he was involved in film study and learning about the game and getting that time on the bench to really examine and scout. And so hopefully he just takes all of that. And I don't even say hopefully. I know he's going to do it because that's the kind of person that we've seen him be, just a very hardworking individual who wants to be great. And so I think you're fair to be concerned, but I would say just hold on and let's see what this third year looks like. It's going to be a critical third year for Brandon Miller.
I don't know if you're using you in general. I don't know if you're saying you walk.
I'm talking directly to the listener, the sicko out there. You know who you are. I'm talking directly to you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, hold your horses.
Yeah, I think it's just fact that some of that stuff, it went down with the new role that Brandon played. And also, we were denied 60 more games. We were denied 50 more games that he could have played. And this is a new system. This is a new coach. So you think about it, Brandon Miller just went through his third head coach in 3 different years. Nate Oates as a freshman at Alabama, Steve Clifford, his first year with Charlotte, Charles Lee, his second year with Charlotte. Not only was it a different head coach in Charlotte, you had different everything going into his second season. Now you're bringing in a new GM that may have tipped Schlotkin as to who he liked while he was with the Nets, but who knows? He technically wasn't a part of the organization at that time. But you do have new everything, and I think it's okay to say we didn't see your best self in this iteration with the 27 games that you played. So the injury stuff, too, perhaps is something to look at. He did suffer a couple of injuries this year. It was different in that the injury he suffered this year took him out. The second one took him out. Last year, he was a victim of the injury bug, except that he would just come right back after maybe a game missed, 2 games missed. He seemed Iron Man-like in that regard, where I thought we might be just doing that again after the glute strain. He misses like a handful of games and then he comes back. But ain't no messing with a torn ligament in your shooting wrist. You're going to need to sit out the rest of the season, especially when you suffer it in January.
Yeah, and the tough thing on the wrist deal not only does it probably impact somewhat his like ability to practice shooting, although he didn't seem very worried about that at the end of the season. He's like, I'm a shooter.
And real quickly, it does. He actually isn't shooting. We talked to him on Wes and Walker. He can't do it. So at least not at the time of exit interview day, but I'm not sure when he was going to pick that up. But yeah, can't really shoot.
But, he seemed to be not concerned about that. Like a bicycle, you just jump back on. You know how to ride a bike. You know how to shoot. If you're a shooter, you shoot. But what you would be concerned about, though, is the thing that I talked about in the first segment, which is he has to get stronger. You can't lift any weights if you can't move your wrist, right? At least in your upper body. Maybe, he's all leg day. So, I'm sorry, Brandon. That must be really difficult. I hate leg day. Leg day's the worst. Everybody thinks leg day's the worst. It's been all leg days for Brandon Miller. So, yeah, I mean, it's all unfortunate, but I'm confident that Brandon is going to take this summer when he gets the cast off and he's ready to go. He's going to take it extremely seriously. He's going to play a lot of catch up, and he's going to be ready to go for this third season. Critical third season could be alongside Cooper Flagg, you look at the mock drafts, we'll get to that in a second, but there are a lot of wing prospects. If it's not Cooper Flagg, he might be next to Trey Johnson. I think he's going to have a new wing buddy, or Dylan Harper. I think he's going to have a new wing buddy, a new wingman, possibly, at least by the end of the season than he did this season. I did look at the 3-point distribution, the frequency according to Cleaning the Glass. Josh Green, his current wing buddy, his current wingman, was tops at 57%, Brandon Miller at 56%, Grant Williams at 55%, Tijon Salon took mostly threes in his shot die at 54%, Nick Smith Jr., Seth Curry. Then you get to LaMelo Ball, 49%, and that might be surprising, but you have to look at short mid. 25% of his shots were short mid. That's float game. That's a big part of his offense.
Yeah, well, and just if you're trying to envision the court in your brain and where all of the starters fit, if you look again as we continue to go to shot selection here, Brandon didn't really take any corner threes when he was playing. Just that's not his role. He's shooting threes everywhere above the break, right? Mm-hmm. Josh Green is go to the corner, camp. We're going to drive. We're going to kick out. And I know we can't say anything good about Josh Green on this show. Did a pretty good job at hitting his corner threes. Took a lot of them because that's his role, right? Hey, you just go sit, buddy. You don't touch this basketball unless we pass it to you in the corner, and then you got to hit the corner three. Brandon didn't take any of them from there, right? So that's the idea. And then so whoever you want to bring in, Dylan Harper, who can do more stuff with the basketball than Josh Green can. VJ Edgecombe, that's the idea. Defensively, he'll help. We'll see offensively. But you have all these wings. Cade Cunningham, that would be interesting as a shooter there. But I think you're right. If you don't get Cooper, then the odds are, with you not being able to fall past 7, you're talking about Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe, Cade Cunningham, Trey Johnson. Like, those would be the next 4 in line. Dylan Harper, I'd even mentioned that, I don't think. Ace Bailey, like those 6 guys are all perimeter players, and they're all going to have to try to figure out how to live in perfect harmony. And I think they can, honestly. I think these guys are skilled enough to where they can do that. And that's exciting. Even if you don't get Cooper, that's going to be a real bummer, but that's exciting to see the talent that you would be able to acquire and then put that next to LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and some of the other guys.
Josh Green, 153 field goal attempts from the corner. The only other Hornet to eclipse 100 was Miles Bridges, and then Daquan Jeffries had 79. Had 79 in 46 games. So really, if you talk about just relative to games played and minutes played, Daquan might be up there with Josh Green as well. So yeah, those were your corner 3 shot makers. Cody Martin also a significant amount in the short time that he was here before he got traded.
Yeah, that they got their roles over there in that Charles Lee system. But it will be interesting, like when guys can do more stuff, right? Like now can you be a little bit harder to predict?
Well, last thing I'll say on Brandon Miller is the one thing that I wanted to see from him more as when we got like 10 games into the season or 10 games into his season. The one thing that I wanted to see from him more as his shot diet was changing, I wanted him to come off of these picks and immediately pull up. Like, I thought there was a little bit too much hesitation on that and him trying to maybe overthink or think about making a play. But I thought there were just so many open opportunities for him right off the pick. And he would sort of allow the defense to reset and not be able to make that play. I think eventually you have to get to that point where you can make that evaluation and make that play from that spot. But I thought just in this first season, as he was changing things up, I just wanted to see him be a little bit more aggressive with that shot. As much as we talked about as many threes as he took, I actually wanted him to be a little bit more aggressive, particularly right off the pick.
Some interesting lineup stuff here too. I don't want to stat the people to death, but Brandon Miller's effect on this team, it's an interesting one to take a deep dive in with what he did in the limited time and how it affected the team. That's an interesting study when you start to research the numbers, and then hopefully get to the playoffs one day. Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna. Damn, that was a good segue too. And then I saw you go for another take. Go ahead. Give me a take.
Sorry, but I just want to put a bow on it because that's my overall take. That you can be concerned about the shot diet. You can be concerned about some of the numbers and with more responsibility. But overall, like when you go back and watch, if you have an ability to like get into the NBA.com world and watch some of his plays this season, he's just such an impact player that I have confidence that he's going to figure it all out in year 3.
Yeah, I think the bow I'll put on it for sure is I don't want to absolve myself. I'm not giving any opinions. I'm not saying that. It's just I'm literally reading what happened last year. Like I'm just telling you what happened. There's not really any concern from me, to be honest. There's a conversation to be had about what kind of high-end ceiling can he hit? Like what is that? What's the likelihood of him hitting that? If he plays out his career 100 times, how often does he hit what archetype we have in our brain? All that, right? We'll have that conversation a million times. Am I concerned about that right now? I'm actually really not. I'm not concerned. Skilled basketball player, smart, cares, all about the right stuff. I'm with Brandon Miller, man. I'm ready to see him take the floor, hopefully, for a 65-game threshold next season. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Oh, wait, one more thing. Just kidding.
Yeah.
He's everywhere.
Too bad. We're moving on. We got a mock draft to get to. Plus, we have playoff conversations to get to. The blueprint, Detroit, Houston. We keep going back to them as the lead. Can we follow their lead? Can the Hornets do it? Is that even possible? We'll get to all of that coming up next. Okay, mock draft time. Let's go right to it. What you got for the people?
Mock draft today. Here we go. I'm going to sim the lottery really quickly. Oh, Charlotte lands the number 1 overall selection. I think we're talking a little bit too much about it. I feel like we're approaching jinx territory.
I don't know. I don't know the rules. I don't know. It's too hard to live with these rules. I just want
it so bad. I can't help but talk about it. Cooper Flagg, he's perfect. He's a perfect wingman to Brandon Miller. I cannot think of I couldn't cook one up in a laboratory better than Cooper Flagg that fits along, because I think the Ace Bailey fit doesn't work. I think you're going to there's too much overlap between what Ace Bailey did at Rutgers and what I think he's going to want to do in the NBA versus what Brandon Miller's already doing. So I just think Cooper Flagg's perfect. Anyway, we'll find out in Chicago. So going to the mock draft, I'm going to pull up NBA Draft Room. They updated their mock draft on May 1st, and the Hornets with the 3rd selection, they're just doing a stock draft here. The 3rd selection, they are taking Ace Bailey. Bailey flashes incredible upside, and when things are going well for him, he looks as talented as any prospect in the world, but there are still too many moments of inconsistent play. So there's Ace Bailey.
Polly Buckets, Cardi Party, Cardi B, Paul B and Cardi. He was on with Kyle Bailey yesterday, and he said Trey Johnson should be the 2nd pick if Cooper Flagg is taken 1st overall.
My God, I don't know. I'm still taking Dylan Harper 2nd. Sorry, Cardi B. But I do love Trey Johnson, and I'll tell you, there's another mock draft that I'm going to do tomorrow, and Trey Johnson shows up in a very interesting position in that draft. But you know I love Trey.
And we love Cardi B. He's the best. Can't not like Paul B and Cardi. Okay, playoff time. Interesting stuff happening with Detroit and Houston, who we've often used as the examples, right? When Houston 2 off seasons ago spent a lot of money on vets that were role players And we thought that they got overpaid. It was so they could help out their younger players figure out what they could do, and they just had grown-ups in the locker room, right? So they overpay for Fred VanVleet, and maybe not so overpay after watching him in the postseason. They overpay, quote-unquote, for Dylan Brooks. They set themselves up with all the young players. Great stuff. Detroit, same thing. They overpay for Tobias Harris, which Hornets fans wanted no part of, right? The ultimate check stealer with what he was doing in Philly. Tobias Harris, good season. Malik Beasley, 1 year, $6 million contract. I mean, that's just a steal no matter how you slice it. They weren't even breaking some kind of notion, oh, we're going to overpay for this guy. 1 year, $6 million, just a home run of a signing to get that guy that could have won Sixth Man of the Year and just was flames from three-point line this year. Will be interesting to see what they do there. Okay, the future for them, though, Doug, I look at what they did, and we've used them so often as examples to where here's another example, right? Now we're having conversations about them having reached the playoffs, whether it's a 2 seed, whether it's a 6 seed, very similar to where they are positioned, I think, in their conferences, even if their seeding is different. Now, at least they're in the conversation to go make the next big move, right? That's the thing. So now Houston is in all of these conversations about, well, maybe they could go after Giannis. Are they a Giannis team? They're one of the favorites. With Detroit, they're not in the Giannis conversation. You're probably having a little bit of a different discussion with Detroit compared to what Houston could do out there on the open market. But Detroit is now, we're all trying to figure out, okay, what's their next step? What can they do? They're in a tough spot, but they're also in a fun, tough spot. Okay, now how do we keep climbing up all of these rungs on the ladder? And that's just something the Hornets haven't been in quite some time.
Yeah, and the Rockets obviously benefited from Şengün's 16th overall selection. Like, I mean, one of the common denominators in a lot of these teams is they just nail the sort of 13 to 20 range of the draft. They just have one of those guys pop, and the Hornets unfortunately didn't, and had the opportunity to take Şengün. Oh no, yeah, did, right, and went with Bouknight.
Yeah. That was a bad one. Yeah. I got to tell you, I was low on Şengün, so that was a bad miss by me. But they could have done it. They could have.
But all roads of Hornets misery lead back to the 2021 draft. But when I look at the Pistons and the Rockets are great in a great position too because they have all those picks. So if they can take either one of two roads. They can go for the superstar right now, or they can continue to develop this core that they've established. And I think that's one of the more interesting offseason questions is, are they going to make a play for KD or Giannis or whatever? And we'll have to see that. Stay tuned to Locked On NBA for more on that. But the more interesting thing to me is Detroit, where you have Cade Cunningham, you have a number 1 overall pick, and that guy has so much intel now on what playoff basketball is, what it means, and he has improvements to make. I thought in that final game, that elimination game, he went to the rim a couple of times and got sent back, and that's been one of his calling cards, being able to hit that shot. But playoffs, teams adjusted to that, and maybe Detroit has to go out and find a second guy for him to take some attention away so that they can't double, triple team him when he's on the drive. But he has so much more information now that he can use, and that's what LaMelo Ball doesn't have. That's what, to this point, Brandon Miller doesn't have. And so, yeah, you know, all this talk of sustainability, it's just ridiculous to me, this idea that, like, we would like to, as a franchise, make the playoffs multiple consecutive years. So we're going to do that by not making the playoffs. It's like, that's not how any of this works. You make the playoffs, you get to the first round, you lose, you give your young players a bunch of intel that they can use to get better instead of regular season basketball, which honestly, like, if you're taking a look at regular season versus playoffs, it's kind of meaningless. You've got to have that playoff experience.
Now, I will say, final thing, Charlotte might be pointing to Detroit as the example of, this is why you build through the draft and then you make shrewd moves in free agency, because even if they paid a lot of money for Tobias Harris, it's a 2-year contract, whatever. Malik Beasley did not get all of this money. He got a 1-year, $6 million deal. There's not anybody saying, oh, they overpaid. Charlotte would be pointing to Detroit and telling you they had their point guard in place. We made shrewd moves surrounding him. We hit on some of our draft picks. This is the formula. So we're using Detroit as an example of, this is what you should be doing. Charlotte is screaming right back at you, this is what we are doing. We're just not there yet, but this is what we are doing. Houston is the one where it's like, go spend all the money on all the draft picks. And that's the one where they clearly aren't doing what the Rockets did.
So this is where the discussion becomes difficult, because I sound like I'm criticizing Jeff Peterson and Schlotkin, and what I'm really doing is criticizing the previous regime, and they have to live with those sins. Because my thing is, obviously some of the stuff with LaMelo's injuries were freak stuff, but I believe in my heart of hearts that had he had a little bit more support, that particularly in these last couple of seasons, less so when they brought in, you had Rozier already, and you bring in Gordon and Kelly, and those two, maybe there's some arguments there that they should have gotten a little bit more defensive support, but. I think if he had a little bit more, then maybe we're not talking as much about these injuries. I don't know. It's difficult. It's like chaos theory. How can you really talk about that? But, obviously, yes, this conversation is about their lack of trust in LaMelo Ball's health. Like, if LaMelo Ball had played 70 games, 65 games once in the past 3 seasons, I think the Hornets might have taken a harder look last offseason, and may have taken a harder look this offseason at putting some more stuff around him. But it's difficult to make that investment when you don't know, when you know that even if you make that investment and LaMelo plays 40 games, you're toast, you're burnt bread.
Okay. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free.
And now
We're
I'm sad again.
Anywhere you get your podcast, that includes YouTube. Doug can go be happy talking about the playoffs on Locked On NBA. Wahoo! Go listen to Happy Doug with Matt Moore and Hayes. I'm jealous of those guys because they get Happy Doug. I get angry and disappointed Doug, where we can't say some certain words on this podcast. Everyhornetsboxscore.com as well. Go follow him on his Substack. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.